Invincible isn't invincible, clearly. But if we looked throughout this entire massive cast of super powerful characters, who actually deserves that title the most? Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the show that just wants you to beat that subscribe button to a pulp. Think YouTube, think! Hey, so Invincible's coming back soon. Yeah, so at this point you probably know about this series. It's all about Mark Grayson, the son of this universe's equivalent to Superman as he navigates getting his own superpowers and living up to his father's legacy. One that's admittedly very complicated, thanks to the fact that he was actually sent to Earth to conquer it, not protect it. The series is probably one of the biggest superhero franchises outside of Marvel or DC, and has become very influential to the genre in its own right. Like, I'm looking at you, Dispatch. I seriously thought that this was an Invincible game at first glance. Anyway, though we've done a few theories talking about the biology and science of some of the characters in Invincible, today I wanted to do something a little bit different. Something a bit more, out there or fun. See, once Mark discovers his powers, he takes on the name Invincible. And I mean fair, who wouldn't feel that way after he realizes he has Superman's powers? But, well, based on what we see in the show, it's difficult for him to kind of live up to that name, isn't it? Every season, Mark gets the crap beaten out of him. Like, he almost dies at least 4 times an episode, so can he really be called Invincible? Or is there someone else in the series that deserves that title more? Well, that's the question I want to answer today, loyal theorists. Who in Invincible is actually invincible? So sure, fun idea, but if we want to do this, we'll need to actually find a way to measure invincibility. So what does it mean to be invincible? Well, according to the dictionary, to be invincible means that you're incapable of being conquered, overcome, or subdued. Okay, that is a little bit basic, so what else can we measure here? Well, something less obvious would be how you become invincible, the qualities you need to earn that title. So what we've done here today is broken this down into the 3 key aspects going into becoming invincible: the physical, the mental, and the social. The physical aspect is probably the closest to what you imagine when you first think of invincibility. Powers that make you super strong and can let you take a lot of damage. There are a lot of people in the Invincible series who can both deal out and take on a lot of punishment. So while this will be important for us, it's not gonna be the end-all be-all. Why? Well, just as important, if not more so, is the mental aspect of invincibility. This would be something like someone's sheer willpower, their convictions and ability to persevere against all odds. To get up like Captain America and keep doing it all day. Even when things get hard, you don't break down. You keep marching on and fight until the end. After all, it doesn't matter how strong you are or how many punches you can take if, at the end of the day, you'll chicken out when you need to use it, right? And as the sprinkle on top here, this will also take into account someone's brain power and intelligence, which would be useful in a fight. Which then leaves us with the social aspect. Have you ever heard the phrase, "it takes a village"? Or how about strength in numbers? Well, those are sayings for a reason. From an evolutionary standpoint, social interaction and cooperation isn't just a feel-good bonus, it's a survival strategy. Early humans didn't outcompete predators by being the strongest or the fastest. They won by forming groups, sharing resources, and coordinating. Hunters, gatherers, caretakers, leaders. Over time, that ability to build alliances scaled into tribes, cities, and whole civilizations. Power multiplies when you're able to work with other people, and that logic applies to the supers in Invincible too. Like, there's a reason Cecil Stedman keeps rebuilding the Guardians of the Globe. Not only do they offer a public face for the supers for the population to rally behind, but combining powers and sharing intelligence dramatically increases survival odds in a big fight. The more allies a hero can rely on, the harder they are to isolate and overwhelm. So someone's ability to make a social network is a core component to true invincibility. Alright, cool. Now that we have the 3 traits that we believe someone needs to really be invincible, I've come up with a handy dandy rubric to help measure it. We're gonna be looking at a bunch of the characters through these 3 lenses and give them a score between 1 and 10. We'll then average those numbers out and round to the nearest number to get the character's final score. And if there's a tie, well, then we'll head into the decimals if we really need to. Also, while we did consider pretty much every character in the series, we won't be getting to everyone in this video. I mean, people like Rexplode or Robot have a lot going for them, but they're clearly not invincible. And while Cecil might be getting a 15 out of 10 in mental invincibility, he's still just an normal dude at the end of the day, you know? Plus, please keep in mind that we're only focusing on characters introduced in the show so far. I mean, this is film theory. We might consider storylines or plot beats or events from the comics, but if they're not in the show yet, we don't want to spoil anything for show watchers. Though, let's be real, all these characters are going to be getting beat up enough that they should be in the hospital way more often. Like, dog, you should probably get that swollen eye checked out. And finding someone to do that is going to be way easier thanks to the sponsor for today's theory, ZocDoc. Seriously though, have you ever had like a really weird or specific injury that you weren't sure what to do about? Like, sure, it could involve getting beaten to a pulp by Omni-Man, or it could just involve twisting your ankle or sleeping weird and getting a crick in your neck. Finding out what to do next can be hard, but that's where ZocDoc is going to come in clutch. ZocDoc is a free website that helps you search and compare doctors for your needs. To be clear, they don't give you the care themselves. They connect you with in-network doctors, professionals, and specialists who get you taken care of. They have over 150,000 providers across all 50 states, covering everything from primary care to dentistry to dermatology and even eye care. I, unfortunately, do not have supervision, but I use ZocDoc to help find a local optometrist when I needed new glasses. And booking that appointment through ZocDoc was as easy as a click. Seriously, ZocDoc, it's just super easy to use. You can filter by who accepts your insurance, how close they are to you, and by ratings from other patients. You can even book everything online instead of over the phone. You can see actual appointment times and choose one to click and book your visit, and the appointments can happen fast, sometimes within just a few days. So if you want to stop putting off appointments and get the care you need from real professionals, go to ZocDoc.com/thefilmtheorists or click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to find a top-rated doctor today. Thanks again to ZocDoc for sponsoring this theory. And with that, let's see who's really invincible. Got it? Cool. So let's take a look at our first main contender, or perhaps pretender. Invincible. So, trying to figure out who is invincible, we should probably start with the guy who claims the name himself, right? Mark Grayson. Right off the bat, in the physical department, well, Mark is incredibly strong and has remarkable endurance. He's half Viltrumite after all. That being said, after many of his fights, he ends up beaten up so badly that he needs extended stays in medical centers and needs extensive R&R to recover. But on the other side of that coin, you could argue that, well, he survived every fight. That's a good track record, even if in so many cases, he's saved or spared before a final blow can be landed. In that sense, yes, Mark's physical invincibility is questionable. Sure, he can fly, throw stuff into space, and punch people into the atmosphere, but put him up against a pure-blooded Viltrumite, and, well, he's coming out looking much weaker than they are. Mark is strong, but not the strongest, so I feel comfortable landing him here with a 7. Mark also has a slew of positive relationships with the bedrock built on his family. His mother, Debbie, is incredibly supportive and understanding, as is his lover, Adam Eve, one of the only other people on the planet who understands the complexities of leading the life of a hero. And though he never joined the Guardians of the Globe or the Teen Team, he is on such good terms with them that many of them backed Mark up when he came into conflict with Cecil. These relationships are what set Mark apart from many of the other Viltrumites in the series so far, so he earns an excellent 9 here in the social department. Really? Things are looking good for Mark, but his big weakness comes down to his mental state. Throughout the series, Mark has been put through trial after trial, and every time he's beaten, he gets back up one way or another. He just simply refuses to give up. But at the same time, at least where we're at in the show right now, it's left him stressed and saddled with guilt. He's basically taken on the burden of being the strongest hero on Earth after Omni-Man left, which would be a tough job for anyone. Protecting his family and loved ones and the constant threats they've gotten has led to many moments where Mark has almost broken, and his resolve and morals have been shaken after Angstrom brought in alternate versions of Mark for the Invincible War. So while Mark has spirit and resilience beyond many in the show, at the moment, I think it's fair to put his mental state at a 6. And therefore, averaging out his scores, Mark lands at a 7 for his invincibility rating.
No hard feelings, right?
Impressive, and he definitely has room to grow if he lives long enough. Oh, and speaking of living long, our next contender The Immortal. So with a name like the Immortal, it seems like he'd be pretty invincible, right? And just right off the bat, on the physical side of things, it does seem like the Immortal here can outlast pretty much anything and everything. He's been alive for thousands of years, and even when he's dismembered or disemboweled or shot like Abe Lincoln, as long as his body parts are close enough to one another, he can come back. But all that being said, that last bit is also a bit of a weakness. If the Immortal is somehow ripped apart, and you can keep those body parts, well, apart, he's not getting back up again. Likewise, he's a powerhouse, especially when put up against normal humans, and even gives Omni-Man pause. Well, before he's then beaten down, and this isn't even the only time he's killed by someone stronger than him, so while the Immortal has a lot going for him in the physical aspect, he still lands at a 6. Impressive, to be sure, but there are people physically stronger than him. However, things get a bit more dicey for the Immortal once we start looking at the mental aspects of things. Yeah, after being killed and revived multiple times in the present day of the series, along with seeing many of his friends and colleagues die, the Immortal seems to have been knocked off balance by the trauma, and he almost completely fell apart after he thinks Duplicate has died. Now, it has to be acknowledged that the fact that the Immortal has lived so long and remains overall a good person, at least at the time of the main series, points to an incredible resilience. But a person can only be pushed so far. When Mark is taken to the future and meets the Immortal, he's become a dictator ruling over the planet with an iron fist because he's emotionally fractured and psychologically unstable, worn down by years of loss. That long-term trauma takes a toll, so we have to say that his mental abilities have limits, and we're only going to be giving him a 4 in this category. Fortunately though, the Immortal does get by with a little help from his friends, the various iterations of the Guardians of the Globe. Having that type of backup helps his cause. Even if he is a bit of a prickly pear when it comes to his personality, he's still considered a great leader and a hero by most of the Guardians and the general public, so he's getting an 8 in his social aspect. Running that through our calculator, and the Immortal gets an invincibility rating of 6. Solid, but, well, we've eliminated our first contender here.
How dare you?
Sorry, bud, but we've got to move on to Omni-Man. Yeah, we have the man, the myth, the mustache that is Omni-Man. If you watched the first season of Invincible, you probably thought that Nolan should have had the title. He was simply a force of nature quite unlike anything else. He's Superman times 100, unafraid to actually use his powers to their full extent. He murdered the entire Guardians of the Globe by himself, destroyed planets and cities, and left his son on death's door. He's also amongst the strongest of the Viltrumites, respected by many of their other warriors in that culture. Yet, all that being said, Nolan isn't indestructible. When faced with multiple powerful opponents, especially other Viltrumites, he can be beaten or at least be put on the back foot. So while he's incredibly powerful, I can't reward him a perfect 10 here. So he lands at a 9 in the physical aspect. And his big, air quotes, weakness right now is actually his mental state. Yeah, Nolan is incredibly intelligent. That just comes with his age. But after falling in love with Debbie and raising Mark with her, Omni-Man grows a conscience. He regrets many of the terrible things that he's done.
The pain and destruction I caused was immeasurable.
To the point where he considers letting himself fall into a black hole and just ending it all. While this is incredible character growth, for a hot minute there, it really hurt Nolan in the mental department. Now, going into season 4, he has recovered a little bit and has teamed up with Alan, but it's still going to be a process for him. So right now, he's getting a 7 in this mental category. But in terms of his social dynamics though, this is where Nolan is really in a weird spot. There are points in his story where this would have been all the way at a 10, back when he was in the good graces of his empire and had the loving support of his family. But these days, Nolan has lost the backing of the Viltrumites, and he isn't exactly on the best terms with his Earth family. Now, he has decided to try to repair the latter, and he's made some new friends like Alan the Alien, so while this has the potential to climb back even higher, right now, as we are heading into season 4, Nolan earns just a 5 in the social category. So surprisingly, going into this next part of the story, Nolan also scores a 7 in his overall invincibility, tying him with Mark. Like father, like son, which leaves us currently with a tie for the title of Invincible, but maybe someone else could crash onto Earth and take it from them. Conquest. Now, a lot of Viltrumites could have been considered in this video, so why go with Conquest over all of them? Well, that's easy. The other Viltrumites fear him. He's an unbridled killing machine, a Viltrumite with a purpose who doesn't care about the casualties of war along the way. When he puts his mind to something, he's laser focused, and heaven help anyone who gets in his path. He's basically unshakable in his beliefs, even if they're suspect and immoral, and he can get really creative in a fight if he wants to. That being said, he is the epitome of the bruiser archetype. He's strong enough that he doesn't necessarily need to think outside of the box most of the time. Because of that, he's landing at an incredibly solid 8 in his mental department. From a physicality point of view, Conquest basically has it all. He's unforgiving and sadistic. He isn't afraid to get stains on that pretty white uniform, and when he arrives on Earth, he delivers a beating of biblical proportions to both Invincible and Adam Eve. I mean, he basically kills the latter, and the only way Mark and Eve beat him are by tapping into new parts of their powers that they didn't even know that they had. Even then, filled with rage, Mark still couldn't completely destroy Conquest. Though the guy's face looked like roadkill, Conquest survives the fight and will definitely be a problem again down the road. Still, he didn't win that fight and suffered massive damage, so he's only going to get a 9 in this category. But, well, things are still looking good for Conquest so far. But his real weakness is in his social relationships, i.e., he has none. Yeah, in one of the most chilling scenes in the fight, Conquest explains,
I am so lonely.
None of the other Viltrumites like Conquest, or they don't even want to be his friend because they're so scared of him. Now, for an empire like the Viltrumites, there is some value and power there, but as we see in his fight, it's a relationship working together that ends up defeating him. So Conquest only gets a 4 in the social aspect. Average those out, and Conquest, who I thought was a real favorite going into this, gets a 7. Again, tied with the other big Viltrumites so far. Maybe we'll have to look at someone a bit more out there to find a real contender. Battle Beast. Okay, so this one might seem weird, but let's think about the villain turned ally of convenience, Battle Beast, for a second. His one goal in his entire life is to find an opponent worthy enough to kill him in battle. That's his ultimate mission, and, well, he's not dead yet. Look, that's a weird life goal, but let's not judge too harshly. He maintains that that's what he wants, and he continues to search for it across the cosmos, and because he's fought so many people, seen so many worlds, and survived, he has a lot up his sleeve and a capacity to learn from the strongest folks across the galaxy. So that's a 10 out of 10 from a mental aspect perspective because he isn't deterred in his quest to enter the feline version of Valhalla. Battle Beast is also an absolute beast in battle, pardon the pun. He's taken down everyone from alien warriors to the guardians of the globe, straight up murdered several Viltrumites, and, most impressively, then survived the vacuum of space for an extended period of time. Like, at this stage, he's just flexing to show what he's capable of. And no spoilers, but in the comics, the only real way to beat him is to be as strong as he is, and if he gives himself a bit of a disadvantage. You'll see what I mean. I'm sure the show will adapt that eventually. So, because of that, I think it's reasonable to give him a 10 here too. Battle Beast is one of the physically strongest characters in the Invinciverse. And because of that, in terms of his social aspect, well, Battle Beast doesn't need friends. Friends need Battle Beast. If you're in a conflict, you want this guy on your team because he is a one-cat wrecking crew. Those who want to survive gravitate towards him, like Alan the alien, who knew he needed his help to get out of a pickle with some Viltrumites. But that being said, this is a bit of a double-edged sword. It's very possible that if Battle Beast views you as a worthy enough opponent, he's going to fight you. So could you ever actually trust him long-term in an alliance like that? Unfortunately, he's docked some major points there, hitting him with a 7 in the social aspect. Averaging out to a 9 here, that puts Battle Beast in the lead as the most invincible character so far.
This term pleases me.
But we're not done yet. Adam Eve. And now for the hero you've all been waiting for, well, probably, Adam Eve. So Eve is a lot like Mark in terms of her willpower and moral compass. Probably a big reason why they were so attracted to each other in the first place. She's experienced a lot of tragedy in her life, both as a superhero and as a person, and yet maintains a never say die attitude. She runs into every battle no matter the odds, and is more concerned about what happens to other people than she is to herself. She wants to help on and off the battlefield, field and refuses to quit when others may have done so a while ago. The only thing that really leaves her behind here? Well, after making some mistakes, she does question whether she wants to be a hero, despite knowing that she still wants to use her powers to help her community, deciding to do so with her intelligence. So while I don't think we can say she's 100% perfect in the mental aspect, she definitely earns a 9 here. Along with that, like any good hero, Eve knows that she can't do everything on her own. She understands teamwork, having been part of the teen team, collaborated with the Guardians, and partnered with Mark. She isn't afraid to be a shoulder to lean on when those heroes need her, but that being said, she does often have a harder time asking for help for herself, so a slight deduction to a 9. As for her physical aspects, well, Eve was genetically engineered by the US government, and that lets her influence matter at a subatomic level. That turns out to be one of the most powerful and widely effective abilities in the entire Invinciverse, limited only by her creativity, and its only real downside is a mental one. She can't affect living matter. Well, that was until Conquest basically kills her and that mental limit lifts. She then, unconsciously, and maybe even while being legitimately dead, reconstructs her entire body and heals all of her wounds. More or less, Eve can't die. Now, there does seem to be something funky going on with the powers at the end of Season 3, but that is absolutely a temporary setback, and given what else Eve can do, well, theoretically, she could let herself and anyone she loves basically live forever by consistently healing their bodies. This might be the easiest 10 I've ever given in an episode like this, and hell, this one might even deserve an 11 down the road, depending on just how crazy she can get with it.
What's the matter? You done already?
So, averaged out, Adam Eve hits a nearly perfect 9 on the invincibility chart, and for the sake of finding a winner, we'll consider that extra 0.33 to put her just above Battle Beast and getting her in the lead. So, is that it? Is Adam Eve the character that really deserves to be called invincible? Well, we're close, but we have one more contender. Alan the Alien. While his friendly personality often comes across as goofy and unassuming, Alan the Alien is the real deal. He's a true hero, bred to fight the Viltrumites as a soldier, but someone who's grown into a solid leader. And though he's looking for warriors to help him in that battle, often the answer lies within himself, even if he doesn't realize it. Alan is one of the kindest and most upbeat individuals in this entire series. Despite everything that's happened around him, the killing and the planet destruction, he remains cheerful and likable, finding time to joke, but also staying on the level with his friends. On top of this, he also has some real strategic ability, allowing himself to lose a fight just to get close to Omni-Man and convince him to join his side. There is no pride or ego in this man, and he understands that the greater good is more important than his own desires or glory. Like, how could he get anything less than the perfect 10 in the mental aspect here? That mentality has also let him build relationships like nobody's business. Like, let's be real, Alan is the master at it. Everyone ends up liking him and most people join his cause. Like, he got Omni-Man to turn around. So yeah, he's getting a perfect 10 in the social aspect too. Additionally, when it comes to the physical aspect, Alan is an evolving being. He holds a unique ability that every time his body experiences trauma, it learns and adapts to it. In other words, he becomes significantly more powerful each and every time he fights, and means that as a viewer, we aren't even 100% sure how strong he is right now, how much he can do or endure. And I mean, he's already gone toe-to-toe with several Viltrumites and survived, and he even killed one. The sky is the limit here for Alan, and you know what? He gets a 9 in the physical aspect, and that can only go higher and higher the longer he lives.
Oh, this is a nice surprise.
Averaging that out and adding in the decimals, Alan would get a 9.66 on the invincibility rating, rounding up to a 10, and making him the most invincible out of all of these heroes. Yeah, sorry Mark, you're gonna need to be trading in that suit. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory. Is Kid Omni-Man being set up as the worst villain for Invincible since dear old dad destroyed his trust?